You know, it's much cooler down here. I was able to ditch the under jacket under my rain jacket, but kept the rain jacket on just in case we get a sudden downpour, because it is getting pretty dark right now and you never really know when those are gonna pop up. But here we are. This is literally one of my favorite waterfalls in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. It's in the Tremont area, and it's a really good one to come to because it has so many tiers. And on a lot of these hikes that you can take up to these waterfalls, you have just waterfall after waterfall after waterfall hiking up the trail, and you can find so many different compositions and fun little lines and things to shoot. So to photograph this one today, I'm using my typical setup for wide angle lenses. I'm using my Sony a6000 with my 12mm Rokinon lens, but I'm using a new filter today, a new circular polarizer, and I'm using a Haida circular polarizer with their little M10 attachment series, whatever you want to call it. But I've really been liking it. I shot with it in the last video of yesterday morning when I went out to the North Carolina side of the park. You can watch that video on the card that's showing up on your screen right now. But like with this lens and this polarizer, I don't get any color cast or anything like that. So I've really been enjoying using it, especially on this trip. It's the first time I've brought it to the Smokies. And this waterfall is just like stunning. I'm itching to get out here and just like play around with this. It's always scary when I run off and grab something else because I always leave my camera and tripod like right on the edge of a rock. Probably should have learned by now. So typically what I look for compositionally when I come out and get to a waterfall is for lines. I look for lines and shapes that I can use in foregrounds. You know, waterfalls lend themselves really well to foreground elements and different areas that you can use. Like if I'm using this area of water that's falling right in front of me, like right here, I can use this as a leading line and direct your frame and your eye directly to this, because we have one line coming here and then we have the white water kind of taking you back this way. Composition for waterfall photography is kind of like, how are you going to use what's in your frame to take your viewer to the subject? And that's using lines, that's using rocks, that's using tree limbs that have fallen into the water. All these things go into creating a good composition in waterfalls, but you just always have to look for lines. You can even get creative and use the streaking water with a long exposure to really pull your viewer into the frame. And typically settings wise, like a lot of people are really over concerned with settings for waterfall photography. It's really not that difficult. Typically anywhere from an aperture of like f14 to f16 is going to give you solid focus all the way throughout. You're going to have something like an ISO of 100 to 400, and then you just use your shutter speed to balance that out. If you want a quicker shutter speed, just bump up your ISO. These are just ways that you can easily go out and shoot a waterfall. So again, easy settings if you're just starting out in landscape photography: f16, ISO 100, and then adjust your shutter speed to balance out that exposure. It's pretty simple. A less than ideal way of getting down here, but I'm pretty excited about this composition that I've set up. Every time I've come here, the water's either been too high or not high enough, and I couldn't really get down here and form a good composition. But I'm pretty excited about the one we have in front of us right now, because like if I turn this around, like we have such a good composition here to use. You see my camera is set up. I was just scoping it out, but we have a looping bottom edge, and I'm going to be shooting this landscape. So this is going to come in from the left side, loop around, and then this wall right here with a wide angle lens is gonna pull these lines and pull you directly into the waterfall itself. So this is what I'm talking about with compositions and setting up something to lead your viewer's eye. So the eye starts on the swoop on the left side, comes down, follows these lines, hit the waterfall, down into the white water, and then comes back. It's a cyclical pattern that not only will be a good composition to use for a waterfall photograph, but it will cyclically lead their eye throughout the frame and be like, oh, now I've made it all the way through the frame. Now I can explore a little bit more and see more of the intricacies, more of the water details. So I'm just gonna frame this up, again, using those settings that I went through just a little while ago. F16, gnats are awful right now. F16, ISO 100, and just balancing out my shutter speed to get that perfect exposure on this water. So now all I have to figure out is how to get back out of here with my camera intact and nothing breaks. All right guys, one more shot. I went down to the lower tier of this waterfall, just down the trail a little bit. But this setup that I have is so dicey right now. Like, look at this. So here's the composition first and foremost. We have these rocks, they're all triangles pointing directly to the waterfall here. It's like a 3-level or 3 waterfall in one, whatever you want to call it. And then the water kind of goes down here and dies, and then kind of like the last one, it loops you back around. But like, look at this. I'm sitting on the edge of a rock. Here's one of my legs. Here's my camera on the edge of this rock. And then I have to get both of my legs far enough out of the frame that they're not showing up. So I'm like doing this dancer pose almost that allows me to get this shot. I just am hoping that my camera doesn't go off the edge right here. I'm trying not to move very much so that it doesn't, but this shot, I've photographed this spot before. I think it's gonna turn out pretty good. That's a wrap on this morning. Man, it's been a long morning. I'm dragging a little bit, I'm gonna be honest. So I'm gonna go reward myself with a nice large cup of coffee at the best coffee shop in Tennessee. Nay, the best coffee shop in the world.